And I've also been excited of getting rid of the clinic.
Getting rid of it.
I've been there. I've been suffering on the cross.
But stress and pressure comes from being asked to do things that we're not well equipped to do.
So true. You're so clever.
After 2 burnouts in dentistry, I asked myself, what if I could turn my struggles into stepping stones for others? That's how this podcast started. We learn from each other, going from stress to success. And with more than 60% of dental professionals facing stress or burnout, this conversation has never been more important. Let's get started.
How are you?
Good to see you.
It's really good to see you. It was over a year ago.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
How fast time goes.
First, we met in London when we were on our way to the Global Dental Collective.
Yes. Yeah, Rabiha was there, wasn't it? And we had that.
Yeah.
I remember we had a really fancy coffee somewhere, wasn't it? It was
Yeah.
a really like bougie type coffee. It was good.
Yeah, really good. And we connected immediately because I had just sold my practice.
Yes.
And you were telling me that you are helping dentists to buy and sell their practices.
Yeah.
So, I'm really interested in what you have to say because, as you know, I have been through all these different phases. Like I've been excited of buying the clinic. I've been excited of building up a clinic. And I've also been excited of getting rid of the clinic.
Getting rid of it.
So I've been like,
but that's not unusual. That's not unusual. That cycle.
Thank you.
Quite typical.
I'm not weird, no.
No, not at all. Not at all. That cycle that you've been through is quite ordinary. It's quite typical. We can have a chat about that.
Yeah. So we have so many things to talk about. So first of all, for all the listeners here who have to know who you are now, tell us a little bit who you are, and please tell us how you started and how you entered the dental field. Because you're not a dentist, no?
No, not at all. No. And I'm always really clear that I'm not clinical, and nothing I do ever strays anywhere near the clinical side. That's not my world at all. My world is a business of dentistry. So my name's Andy Acton. I bought Frank Taylor & Associates with my business partner back in 2000. And back then it was a fairly small business that focused purely on valuing and selling dental practices. And that's still what it does today. And at the time I was working for a bank developing services for dentists, primarily loan products, lending products for dentists to buy practices or grow their businesses. And the chap, Chris Jevons, who I'm still in business with, was doing the same thing. And we had an idea that it'd be really good if the bank acquired Frank Taylor & Associates, because then it would give them access to all that business that they could lend to. And the bank didn't want to take that opportunity. So we said, well, would you mind if we bought that business? Not for a minute thinking the bank would say yes. And they did say yes. So we thought, we better do it then. So we bought the business. And what was quite interesting is when we bought it, we continued to work. We maintained our jobs in the bank in the city. And so this job was this business was kind of what gets referred to today as a side hustle. You know, we didn't really do much with it, to be honest with you. And it kind of got neglected for a few months. And we thought, this is crazy. You know, we'd taken a big bank loan. We had this business. And we felt that we were spending all our time in the wrong place. We were kind of, working for a bank in the city. So we decided to make the leap of faith. And we left our jobs in the city. And we committed to the business full time. And that commitment was transformational. Because no longer was it something that we did kind of evenings and weekends. We were in it. And whilst I think it's always good to have a plan B, there wasn't an obvious plan B. And so we had to make it work. And that really drove us to grow the business. So whilst it started out as a business that just valued and sold dental practices, quite quickly, because of our background, we said, well, we should help people arrange money. So we've now got a loan brokerage. And we then said, well, one of the areas that people struggle with is accessing good legal services. So a few years later, we started a law firm, and I've since exited that firm, but it still lives on, and it's still providing great services to the dental profession. And then something else that we were missing as a business is we didn't really have much of a digital footprint. People couldn't really find us or interact with us. So we started creating some social media content and some videos. And then out of that, we had clients asking us whether we could help them with their social media content and creating videography for them. And so that spawned the beginning of FTA Media. So the group has kind of grown, but all on the business services side of dentistry. And I can't believe that all started 25 years ago.
Wow, I didn't know that you have been in the business for so long.
Yeah, long time.
And that shows as well that it's so important to have an open mind, because when they asked you if you could help them with the marketing, sometimes we don't see that is a door actually opening to you. And some people maybe say, no, we're not doing that, but that could be a possibility to expand.
I mean, within our group, we have this acronym, which is APE, which is Assess, Protect and Enhance. And if it falls into the category of either assessing the value of their business, protecting their business, so we also do insurance products for our clients, and we can help them with investments as well, or it can enhance their business, we will seriously consider it. So if it falls under the category of assess, protect or enhance, we will seriously consider it as an option for us. What we're not going to do is we're not going to do things that fall outside of that, because we want to stay known as the people in the business of dentistry. If it falls outside of that category, other people offer great things there, but that's just not for us.
Do you see things in the dental field that you don't see outside dentistry?
Yeah, I think the major issue that dentists have from a business perspective is they're never trained for this, and you may have experienced this yourself through your own journey. A dentist will spend the last few years of their mainstream education taking lessons that are going to prepare them to go to university. So it's going to probably be maths and science-based qualifications. You then go to dental school, and in the UK it's a 5-year degree, followed with lots of postgraduate education and continued professional development. But it's all science-based, it's all clinical. And don't get me wrong, from a patient perspective, I love that. I don't really care whether my dentist understands the algorithm for Instagram or is able to read spreadsheets. I want them to do good dentistry. So from a patient perspective, I get it. However, even as an associate, so a self-employed dentist in the UK, and even more so as a practice owner, you need to understand business. You need to understand how to communicate with patients. You need to understand how to generate revenue. You need to know how to build rapport. You need to understand how digital marketing works. These things are important. And sadly, dentists are ill-prepared for that. And I have this notion that stress and pressure, and I know we're going to talk about this a bit later on, but stress and pressure comes from being asked to do things that we're not well equipped to do. That's where I believe it comes from. If we're asked to do something that we don't feel comfortable with, we get stressed by that. If you think about if you were asked to give a presentation and you weren't prepared, you probably feel stressful about that. And I think that is the dripping tap for dentists about most things to do with business. They're not equipped to deal with business. Clinically, they're fine, but anything to do with business always leaves them feeling slightly uneasy. And I think that's where the stress and pressure builds.
So, in other words, do you think that our education should be modified?
100%. It absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, it should be. I think the problem and the conflict comes that the people who run the dental schools and the deans, quite rightly, it's a clinical course. Therefore, finding the space for it to fit in and it running alongside what is quite a busy clinical program isn't easy. So I completely understand the challenges it brings. I think the difficulty for when people leave dental school is they're not probably as prepared as they could be if some of these basic core principles of business were introduced. And some dental schools are better than others. Within the next couple of weeks, I'm going to Newcastle Dental School to talk to 60 or 70 students up there about just the basic foundations of business, the sorts of things you need to understand. But that's going to be in the evening. It's going to be an elective thing to go to. It's not core to the program. And unfortunately, quite often young people don't know what they don't know, so they don't realise it's as important as it would be.
Because your main goal as a young dentist is to become a good dentist.
Yes.
If somebody would say to me back then, let's start, would you like to start a burnout prevention program? I would be like, no, I want to become a good dentist. I want to be able to do great veneers. You don't even, just like you said, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why it's so important that educational program is good, because we look up to the dentists, we look up to our teachers, and they should know what we need. So can you see, if we will generalize a little bit now, can you see a pattern between the dentists who succeed and the dentists who fails and get burnout and sell their clinics?
I think some of it is, I think there's definitely a personality type in there. I think we see some people who they happen to qualify in dentistry, but actually they're just good business people, and they're not people who necessarily obsess about the clinical side of things. They're quite balanced, so they're able to cope with the business and the dentistry quite nicely. So I think you get those people who are just naturally well disposed to that, and quite often they're people who have a history of business owners or entrepreneurship in the family. So they've seen that from a young age in terms of that broad set of skills that you need. So that's one side. And the other people who do quite well are those who are very self-aware, and they know what they're good at, but importantly, they also know what they're not good at. So they bring in the right people around them. So rather than trying to burden themselves by doing everything, they bring good people around them. And it may be that they might own the business, but they're just an outstanding clinician. So they don't bother themselves. They have a business manager, they have somebody who does their marketing, they have a financial person, and they primarily spend their time in the surgery delivering clinical services. So I think if you're in the category where you're able to surround yourself with excellent people so you can focus on the bit you're good at, which may well be the clinical bit, because that's where your training is, or they're people who are just personality-wise or through family connections more comfortable with business. I think, unfortunately, both of those categories tend to be outliers, and there's a huge portion in the middle of people who are trying to do it all, getting stressed, and not doing anything particularly well. And sadly, in many cases, not knowing how to get out of that situation either.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, as you know, we have a lot of suicide in our profession.
Terrible, absolutely terrible.
Why do you think it goes so far?
I think it's very hard. I mean, you can only ever talk in sort of general terms, because I think when somebody gets into that situation, I think their tunnel must be so dark and so long. I think it's hard for us any of us really to know. I think we don't appreciate always just how stressful the profession is. I think it's incredibly demanding. I think you as dentists, you're doing microsurgery time and time again through the day, over the weeks, over the months, over the years. So the skill and the focus that you need every time, I think for non-clinicians is often not appreciated, because you're dealing with a high-speed drill. You're delivering microsurgery where there's lots of blood and arteries, and things can go wrong. So I think that there's a stress and pressure that comes with that. But also I think for lots of people, particularly in the UK, there's obviously the regulatory structure, as there is everywhere in dentistry, but there is kind of this constant nagging fear that the General Dental Council are going to be on your case. You're going to get reported for something, whether it's justified or valid or not. Sadly, the process, if a complaint is made to the GDC, the General Dental Council, takes an awful long while to work its way through the system. So quite often people can have this almost this sword of Damocles hanging over them for a couple of years before their case gets heard by the GDC. And then when it gets heard by the GDC, it may be thrown out. But that process is quite slow. So I think that can be incredibly stressful for people. In the UK, we have the Care Quality Commission, CQC. So again, there's another regulatory body there. I think managing people is incredibly hard. So I don't know if it's ever just one thing, or whether it's this compounding effect of pressure that builds up. And then I think you've also got, everybody's got a personal life, and I think that gets thrown into the mix as well. And I think dentistry is quite demanding in the sense that the only way that you can generate revenue is by being in a surgery. Lots of people are talking about AI and robotics and everything else, but there's no substitute for the extended amount of time dentists need to spend in their surgery to make money. So it's quite a time-consuming profession. If you can get to a stage where you have a business that isn't so reliant on you as a clinician, I think that can help free up some time, which in turn I think can help depressurise the situation, because it gives you opportunities to do things away from the surgery. But not many people get to that stage. Lots of people have this need to stay in the surgery for extended periods of time. So I think it's multifaceted. I don't think there's one thing you can pinpoint and say, this is the reason. If we fix that, everything's good. I think it's way more complicated than that, sadly.
It sounds like, and the conclusion I have come to, because of course I have been through so many different phases and really tried to analyze everything from like my childhood. Why was I a people pleaser? Why couldn't I set boundaries? Why was I not self-aware? To the extent that now I'm very self-aware. I'm analyzing, it's so fun how life is, because the last 4 months I have had my father living in my
nice.
in my home. And
I say nice. I assume it is.
You should ask my husband. And my husband and I and my children, they are like, that's why you became like you were, because it's like a criticism in everything, very negative. So because they were very negative, my father and mother, we have to tell that I was at your podcast. I was a guest at your podcast.
Yes, you were.
Speaking about my things, but instead, just like you said, that everything comes from our childhood. There is where everything started, and it's not to speak too much about our childhood, but it's important to understand. I think that it's just when you understand why you are like you are, that you can actually change it. And it's good if you get help, professional help with that. So
it's interesting what you say about your husband and children. Obviously noticed a difference in you when your father has been in the house for 4 months, which kind of indicates there has been a slight adaptation in your behaviour, and whether that means that you go back to Christina the child, or whether you become more of a people pleaser. But I think we do adjust our behaviour to our environment, which isn't a terrible thing, because we are all a little bit chameleon-like. I'll be different talking to you than perhaps talking to my wife, or talking out with my friends, or if I was at a business event. So we do vary slightly, but I find it fascinating how we can be influenced by other people in terms of how we are and how we behave.
Absolutely. And nobody can trigger us as our parents, because that's why it started. But the funny thing is that I really worked on changing him as well. So when he, for example, woke up or he came up in the morning in bad mood, instead of me adapting as I always did, I looked at him and I said, "What's wrong? Are you in a bad mood or what?" I confronted it, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm in bad." And I said, "Don't you think that you have the power to affect your own mood, to adjust it?" And now I don't know if it's because of fear or if I changed him a little bit. But now in the morning I'm like, how are you? And he's like, I'm great. Yeah, it's so funny how, but it really made me understand also why I became perfectionist, because often it starts from criticism. But it's also important to forgive, because he has had his childhood problems, and it goes from generation to generation. And every weakness will also become your strength. So my strengths are that I'm very, it's easy for me to adapt to different people and understand different people. And what I hear a lot is my positive, happy vibes. But that also was what made me fail in dentistry, that I couldn't find the balance. I could never find a balance and set the boundaries. And I had no business mind. So I totally agree with you there, that the business mind, and first of all, the self-awareness. So if we go to your life, what is stressful in your life or in your business?
I think people in your business is probably your biggest stress, because we're in the service industry, so having a good team is really important. And for me, it's always about, have we got the right team? Are we treating them as well as we can? Are we training them as well as possible? So it's not stressful in the sense that they're causing me problems. It's a stress of, are we always doing the best by the team, and are we always creating the best environment for them to perform? That's the bit that I find probably most stressful in business, just because without the team or without the people, we don't have a business. So I obsess about, are we always doing the best for them? We're fortunate. So there in the UK, there's been, or within UK dentistry, there's been quite a recruitment issue for the last few years. So what happened during COVID is dentistry lost quite a few people to different businesses. They actually moved out of the sector. And I think for a period, as was probably the case across the world, dental surgeries, they felt like hospital theatres. People were wearing full gowns and masks, and it wasn't the environment it was. And actually, we lost quite a few people working in dentistry, and that created a recruitment crisis. And again, going back to kind of the stress and pressure, I think if you're short of team members, that's hard work. We never actually suffered with that, thankfully, and I attribute that to a large part because we actually do a 9-day fortnight. So my team, they all continue to get paid 100% of their salary, but they work 5 days one week and 4 days another. So they get 1 day off every other week, and they can do what they want with that. If they want to pursue a hobby, if they want to sit on the sofa and watch Netflix, if they can do literally whatever they want with it. But what it means is that we've seen there's been no reduction in productivity. So productivity has been maintained, but we've not lost a single team member since we introduced that. And I genuinely believe we've got a happier team as well. So it's things like that I'm always looking for. I'm always looking and kind of saying, right, so how do we create this environment where people genuinely want to come into the office? It's not they groan on a Monday morning because it's work. They genuinely want to be in and delivering a good service. That's probably the biggest thing. That it doesn't keep me awake at night, but it's the thing that I probably think about more than anything in business.
What routine or protocol do you have to make sure that you always stay ahead with that?
So I and my other directors, we tend to spend a reasonable amount of time going to conferences outside of dentistry. So we look to go to events outside. Dentistry is great, but I think with any market, it can become quite incestuous. So the same ideas and the same people keep circling around. So I think it's important to get outside of your profession, and I advocate this to dentists as well. Yeah. Go to non-dental events. Go and see what other people are doing. So we do a reasonable amount of that. We go outside of events. We also have a very strong, active social program. So we make sure that we eat out together as a team. We go and have fun together as a team. We have we kind of gamify certain things. So at the moment we've got a social media leaderboard. So the team are encouraged to like, share and comment on our social media posts, and someone's going to get a voucher and they can use that to go and redeem it against them and be out with their partner or go to the cinema or whatever else. So it's trying to keep people engaged in business with a clear output that's going to be beneficial to the business, but turn it into a bit of fun, because people like doing things that are fun. Everybody knows they're here to work. Everybody knows, they have an employment contract. They're going to get paid a certain amount of money for doing a certain amount of things. That's kind of a given. It's how do you create an environment where people enjoy what they're doing? Because if we think about the things that we're good at, we generally enjoy them. It's rare you're really good at something you don't enjoy. So if you follow that through into the workplace, if you can get it into a space where they enjoy what they're doing, by virtue of that, they will perform better. And that's kind of what we're trying to create with a team. And if you get that right, then actually, as a business owner, some of that stress and pressure of owning and running a business, I think, starts to fall away. Because we're in the people business. Whatever service you're delivering, you're in the people business. And if you don't understand that, you need to, because it's really important. If you don't obsess about making sure that your people are doing the right job, they've got the right support, they've got the right skills, that is going to bite you on the backside at some point.
Yeah. How many are you in the team?
So across the whole group, we're 42 people, split across four different offices.
Wow.
But I'm incredibly fortunate that we have a kind of a managing director across each of those divisions. So from that point of view, it's great. So on a day-to-day basis, I don't need to be managing that many people. And again, it comes back to that. It takes a long while. I've been doing this for 25 years. Sometimes people join you, they don't work out, and it doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means they don't suit your environment, so they can go and be happy working somewhere else. But when you get to a point where you get good people in those key positions, that makes it much easier to step back and think more strategically about your business.
Do you agree with the saying, hire slowly, fire fast?
I do, yeah. I think that with people, we don't always listen to our gut perhaps as much as we should. And I think with people, because on the kind of the hire slow, fire fast, I think if you hire slowly, what it will do is it will put pressure in a healthy way on existing team members. And what that will probably do is that might drive some efficiencies, because people will find better ways of doing things because they're busy. But then when the time comes, don't delay too long hiring people, because that's not fair. But equally, if somebody comes in and they're not a good cultural fit, and that's the bit around the fire fast, is are they a good cultural fit? Because in reality, you're probably not going to know that quickly whether the person has the skills and the aptitude for the job, but you will know what their attitude's like. And if it's not working early on and it's an attitude based thing, the likelihood of that changing is pretty slim. But also look and listen to your team, because in my experience as humans, we kind of operate in tribes where we like to be in a group of people who are like us. So if somebody joins your business and they're not the right sort of person because they just don't, the rhythm's off. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means they're not working to the same rhythm. And you'll see that within your team. And if that's not aligned, then it's going to be quite difficult. And sometimes you get it wrong. It might be you get rid of somebody who turned out to be really good. But I would say listen to your gut. If things aren't right, don't gloss over it. Dig into it and try and find out why. And it may be that there is just a mismatch. And I think it's also fair to the person who joins the team as well. Because if you've got reservations, in most cases, they most likely have those reservations as well. And I think the way to insulate yourself against it is be really upfront at the interview process. I always take the view that if ever we're bringing in a new team member, they should be interviewing me to the same extent I'm interviewing them. I want them to truly understand what sort of business we are, how we operate, the service levels we work to, and what's important to us. Because I don't want there to be any surprises. I don't want them to join the business and be, oh, well, I didn't quite realise that this is what it's like. I really want to be as upfront as possible. I think that old school thinking, if I sit there interviewing you to see whether I want you to work in my business, I think it should be a two-way street. I want to tell you everything about my business, and then you can decide whether it's right for you. Because I think it just saves a lot of heartbreak and hassle and grief down the line.
That's so true. You're so clever.
No, I've learned this from people that are way cleverer than me.
So, what are so your clients? Are they mainly dentists, or do you have clients outside dentistry as well?
No, all of them. They're all dentists.
They're
As a
all
business,
dentists.
yeah, lots of people have said to us, well, why don't you diversify? Why don't you go into other sectors? There's still so much opportunity within dentistry to serve the profession. We're busy enough in that profession. And also I love the fact that we are exclusive in that is the market that we work in, and that's the market that we serve. So it means we can go really deep in not just understanding the makeup of the profession in terms of the services you offer, but the personality types. And it means I genuinely believe we offer better services by only serving the dental profession. And I think from a marketing point of view, there's something quite powerful about saying, if you're a dentist, we can help you, and if you're not a dentist, then we can't. The only exclusion to that is our finance company. They look after all of healthcare, but on the valuation and the sales side, it's purely dental.
Mm. I'm going to go back a little bit to what you said about going outside dentistry, because I had a speech on a conference that was for storage people, like people
Wow.
that have storage. Yeah, totally different.
That's left field, isn't it?
And I really find it, just like you said, inspiring to hear people's ideas that are outside dentistry. And you realize that we all have our own reality. We are all in our own little bubble. And if we don't step outside, we will not see it as real as it actually is. So, for example, in the storage business, heard most of them are men between like 40, 65. And they have a thinking of, okay, how can I do as little as possible and earn more money and optimize more things? And it's like, we dentists are more into just working hard. The more we work, the more we explain how we suffer, go to courses. And it's finding a balance there, because the more stressed we are, the slower our minds get. We cannot see as clear as it is. That's one of the reasons why burnout and depression develops, because you just have too many things on your mind. Just like you said, instead of thinking, what are my superpowers? What is it that I like to be doing? And what should I delegate? If I don't like administration or the business part of it, then I should hire somebody who will handle that part.
100%.
So,
and I think that's great advice for everybody. And I think as a business owner, sometimes what happens is you just keep taking on more and more responsibility and more tasks and more jobs, and you don't pause to say, what is it I actually enjoy? And then start going the other way and start delegating tasks and outsourcing tasks, which is interesting because it sounds like the guys in the storage business, they're obsessed about trying to outsource stuff and delegate stuff so they can do less and less, which is the other end of the scale.
Yeah. So you learn a lot, and and just like you said, if you grow up in a family or grow up in an environment with the business mind, you will see those roads, those ways more easily. But if you don't have that, and you start to work in a small practice, you will be in your bubble and you cannot see those things as easy as other people. But that's why it's so important to try to reach out to network. And I think the younger generation, the younger dentists that I'm speaking with, they are much more open-minded. They see things totally differently.
Yeah, and it needs to change. And I think in the UK, I don't think it's just the same in Spain, but there's definitely two cultural things that go on. One, people, more so men than women, but I think it affects women as well, don't talk particularly openly about how they're feeling. Like, if you go to any event, you say to somebody, "How are you doing?" They go, "Yeah, I'm great." Stock answer. "Oh, yeah, I'm great. Yeah, how are you?" That's kind of the stock answer. Even with people you're close to, there's a stock answer, which is, "I'm great, I'm great, how are you?" And then I think the second thing is that quite often pressure builds up because of business performance. And particularly within the UK, people don't particularly like talking about how their business is performing and whether they're under financial pressure. And I think financial pressure is a really big one in terms of affecting people, in terms of their mental health, the relationships they have with people, and it can get quite dark. And I think the compounding effect of not having either the ability to talk about your feelings or a network where you feel you can do that safely links with the stress of business, which may not be performing as well as you want it to. I think that becomes quite a toxic combination. And I don't know if that's just a UK thing or not, but that I see that in the UK, that people generally don't like talking about their business and their numbers. And men more so than women don't talk about their feelings. And I think that creates quite a toxic situation for individuals.
What would you like to see? What would they speak more about?
I think just generally sort of more openness. But I'm acutely aware it needs to be done within a framework where people feel comfortable and safe. You've got to be very careful not talking to all and sundry about, the things that bother you, but trying to create environments where people are able to do that. Actually, I think UK dentistry is pretty good. I think there are lots of groups and networks that people can talk to, but I just don't know whether it ever really goes far enough, whether it truly gets beyond the "I'm great, how are you?" "Oh, I'm great." Does it get beyond there? But the people that I tend to see who are doing well, particularly on the business side, are those who are quite open about their business performance. So those are people who talk quite openly to me about their numbers, and they're quite open to their team about certain metrics within their business. So everybody's aware of how the business is performing. And I think that's quite liberating, because quite often there's this misconception that the business owner is making loads of money, they're doing really well, and they're only paying me a fairly modest salary.
Yeah.
But when you actually start exposing the figures and the whole team understand that making money in business isn't quite as easy as everybody thinks it is, suddenly it's shared across everybody, and then the whole team can support you. And it needs to be done in a carefully calibrated way, and it needs to be articulated in the right manner. But that can help, because being a business owner is lonely, and most practice owners in the UK tend to be sole principals. So it's just one person owning the business. So they don't necessarily talk to their team members about it, because they don't feel comfortable doing that. When they go home, they kind of want to have a home life and don't want to be sitting there having their spaghetti bolognese moaning about the day and business and numbers. So perhaps they don't do that so much. So they can talk to somebody like me or other people within the profession, but it becomes quite isolating in terms of where you do that. Whereas if you could create an environment where you could talk more openly about business with your team, I think people would be surprised that people are genuinely interested. If for no other reason, for self-interest to protect their job, they would be interested. But that's not something that actually happens that much. And I think that in turn builds pressure on business owners as well.
Yeah, you're so right. So what are the services that you are offering to dental practices, to dentists?
So we value and sell dental practices, and that it's a very transactional offering. And typically what happens is those two services go together. So people typically come to me and say, can you value my dental practice? And then can you sell it? I'd like to see an evolution from the most common question I'm asked is, what's my dental practice worth? What I'd like to move to is the question, what could my dental practice be worth? What I'd love is people to come to me 3 to 5 years before they sell. So we can assess the value of their practice. We can put in place some suggestions and a development plan so that over the next 3 to 5 years, they end up with a better business. If you end up with a better business, you may decide to not sell that business. You know, I think about perhaps you in your situation. You've been through different periods of burnout, but I'm sure that part of selling your practice was perhaps linked to how you felt at that time. However, if there was a structure in place to reconfigure your business, which meant that it wasn't so draining for you, you may have continued to own the practice because it would have liberated it and freed you up. So many dentists don't get to that position. They don't get to sell.
So many people have asked me that. Why didn't you keep it and just run it, and other people could work there, and you wouldn't have to work there so much, and you could keep being the owner. And so just that, I'm very transparent and honest with my story because I think that's the way I can help people. So after the COVID 2020, I entered a phase where I was really inspired. I invested in machinery, scanner. And I think it's a combination. Just like you said, it's not only our job, it's also the personal life and sometimes bad luck. So one of the scanners that I invested in gave problem all the time. So so much energy every day went to trying to solve the technical problems. And you have patients that have to wait when we're using something that we invested in to not have to wait to get the flow. So that was bad luck, or call it how you want. 2021, my son got cancer. And I was the only dentist at the clinic. So I was going from all these emotional roller coaster from the being a clinic owner and having personal difficulties. And then 2022, when the doctor said that he was fine, I think that is when the burnout hit. One of my dental assistants that was really working so well with us, she had to move to another country. I really got the feeling that I don't want to stay here anymore. But I had to add that I had been there 18 years. Not many dentists are at the same clinic from the first day as a dentist, and
18 years is a long stretch. I have a notion about owner fatigue, and I think owner fatigue is just this, I'm fed up with everything, and that tends to kick in around about 10 to 12 years. Practice owners,
that's interesting.
They tend to get about 10 to 12 years in, and they can't put their finger on what it is, but it's just managing people, compressor not working, constantly having to change my nurse. I've got to always do CQC. I've had patients complain, and it's never developed into anything, but it's a hassle. Worried about in the UK hitting my NHS UDA target. It's this dripping tap of everything tends to kick in around about 10 to 12 years. So for you to get to 18 years, that's a long stretch.
It's interesting that you said 10 years because that was the first burnout hit me.
Right, yeah.
10 years, yeah.
Doesn't surprise me.
But then I'm a stubborn person. I'm a hard worker. So I was like seeing the positive in everything. That's when I started with the DJing. So I started to find things outside dentistry that would spark that. But then I entered the same feeling like, the owner fatigue, dental practice owner fatigue. And I came to the point, Andy, that I felt like I could just throw the clinic to anyone. Like, do you want the clinic? Take it. And that's what I want to ask you. Like, does that happen often, that when the owner finally, because it's not easy to come to the point to realize that you're selling it if it's not because of retirement. So when you come to that point, so many things have happened that I got desperate. I just wanted to sell it fast. And it was really a hard period when I realized that I want to sell it. And then you have all the administration and you're already so exhausted. Thank God I had a dentist working at the clinic at that point. So it was not dependent only on me, because that I don't think that would work. Then the revenue would just I have read an article about that when you get a burnout and then the dental practice owner fatigue, your revenue starts to, it's like it lowers like 60%, or it was something really crazy.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have, thankfully, too many clients who come to us perhaps in what was quite a distressed state that you're at. We do have lots of people within this owner fatigue window where they're kind of 10 to 12 years in, and there's just this general feeling of being fed up, and is this it? Is this all I'm going to do? So those people sell. But there is no doubt that when people, there's a mental switch that flicks, which is we provide a valuation and they go, right, I'm selling, I've effectively sold. And the danger is they back off. And the process in the UK to sell a dental practice is quite elongated because of primarily the NHS, that you have to move that NHS contract over. We have CQC, the Care Quality Commission, and that's running at the moment about a 4-month process to get that moved over. And also quite a lot of the dental practices in the UK, the property element, the dentist doesn't own the property. So there's what we call a third-party landlord, and that can take quite a while to get sorted. So all those things put into the pot means that the sale process could be 8 to 9 months. The danger for the business owner is through that period they need to stay really motivated and continue to perform and deliver the numbers. So we kind of sometimes feel like cheerleaders in the background telling the dentist to keep working hard, keep doing really well.
Have you noticed that is
for
difficult?
Sure.
That
for
period
sure.
is difficult for the dentist?
It is. Oh yeah, because like I say, in a perfect world, I'd like the question to be, what could my dental practice be worth? But the question is, what is my dental practice worth? Which means they've already really mentally decided to sell their practice. There's also lots of evidence out there that humans take between 2 and 5 years to make big decisions. We procrastinate and we churn this stuff through in our head for years and years. So big decisions like getting married, having children, buying a business, selling a business. You'd be amazed how long we think about those things before we actually take the action to make it happen. And so as a result of that, by the time they come to talk to a guy like me, they may have already been having this working around in their head for 2 years or 3 years. So they feel like this is old news. And that's also started to potentially permeate through to how they behave. And you'll see it in their numbers, because the numbers don't lie. The numbers will show you how that business is performing. And I want people to get out when their business is performing well and they feel great. That is the perfect time to go. They hand over a great performing business. They're in a really good place, mentally and financially, and they can then go on and do their next thing. Sadly, lots of people come to me when they're not, I don't think they're quite at the extreme that you were, which is a shame. But we do get a lot of people who are quite fed up with the whole process. Whereas if we could speak to them a year earlier, we could get them out of their situation a bit sooner. And in reality, then they may even get more for their practice, because even though they might sell a year before they thought they were going to, so arguably they miss out on a year's of profit, they might get more for their practice, which would be similar to the amount of profit they would have earned in that next year anyway. So they might have got similar amount of money, but without all the hassle and the stress of having that last year of ownership.
But that is so difficult to get to that thought when you're feeling okay. You get to that thought when you're falling.
Yeah, but that's life, isn't it? Lots of people, they don't particularly pay attention to their diet until they put on a bit of weight, and then they go, I need to lose weight, I should eat more greens. So people don't necessarily worry about their mobility or their flexibility until they get a bit older, and they go, oh, perhaps I should start doing Pilates. So it's a human condition. We're not good at prioritising the things when things are good, but actually doing the things when things are good is way easier than waiting for them to get bad and then trying to make it better. And the same applies to business as it does to us as people. Look after your business when it's in good shape. And like I say, people should be checking in. People know the value of lots of things. People will regularly check the value of their house or their car, but they don't regularly check the value of their business. And I find it amazing because sure, it's a thing that's producing them with a living and an earning and an income. However, it also has a capital asset value as well. And knowing what that is important because in your case, if you'd have known that in advance, it may have been that you may have had the opportunity to pull the trigger and do something a bit sooner. If another opportunity came up which was different from only running a dental practice, you may be able to take the opportunity because you know where you're at, but not having the information is a problem.
So what advice could you give to a dentist who is hearing this and is an owner and start to feel owner fatigue? What would you say to that dentist right now?
I think talk to somebody, whether it's me or somebody, but tell people how you're feeling. Try and pinpoint the elements that are causing you to be tired,
which
unhappy,
one of the thousand
stressed.
things?
Yeah, because in many cases, it might be a relatively simple fix. So it might be that somebody says, honestly, just like managing people, I just don't like it. I find it really stressful. I find it really hard. I don't naturally build good rapport with people. If you've got a business that's performing really well and that's causing you stress, you may be able to bring in somebody, even on a fractional part-time basis, who manages HR for you. So you might not have to do it. But you haven't got to do all this stuff yourself, and it's choices. Now, let's just say your business is, just for ease of numbers, is producing a profit of £100 a year, but you don't actually need £100 a year. You could live very nicely on £60 or £70 a year. You've actually got some headroom, and would it make sense to redeploy some of that surplus profit to bring somebody into your business to manage an element that you really don't enjoy? It's having that sort of outlook, but I think when we kind of just keep doing the thing time and time again, the channel we're in, we cut a groove, and that groove gets deeper and deeper and deeper to the point where we kind of can't see anything outside of it because we're in that. And I think talking to somebody, and it may be the resolution is to get your practice valued and get it sold. That might be the way out, but it also might not be. And you might also be able to make some changes if you are feeling fatigued with your business to enable you to run on for another year or two, make sure that performance is maintained and then get a good exit value. But also importantly, enjoy your last year or two of ownership. It's very rare I have a dental client who says, I'm really fed up with dentistry. Patience. I just don't like doing dentistry. It's always the business stuff. It's the managing the people, looking after the building, constantly having to do new marketing. We've always got to come up with open days for Invisalign or whatever it might be. It's all that stuff that bothers them. The clinical bit they still really enjoy because that's the bit they're trained to do.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it all comes down to ourselves. We have to work with ourselves. So if you're a people pleaser hearing this, you have to work on yourself. You have to go to the core of it, like, why am I afraid of rejection? Because if I'm afraid of rejection, it will mean that I will not be a good leader. I will not be a good dentist because I will not set the boundaries. I will not realize what are the things that I love, that I'm good at. What do I don't like? What don't I like? What can I delegate? Or where can I hire a person that's better with this? Everything starts there. If you don't control these things and you don't control yourself, that's when you will be lost and it will just be overwhelming you with everything. So
I think that's great advice. And you've been through it, Christina. It's not it's not you're saying, oh, these sound like good ideas. This is from like your raw experience of
I've
having
been
lived
there.
it.
I've been suffering on the cross. Yeah, but you know what doesn't break you makes you stronger.
No, exactly.
I feel really strong now, but I had to go to the core to myself, because you cannot blame. You have an environment that is difficult, yes, but in the end, it all depends on you.
Yes.
What you say
and ideally
what you
you
say
want,
yes to, and what you say no to.
and I think you're right. It's you're fortunate because you had a really hard time, which is a shame. But you've come out of it a much different person, and you've got your story to tell, and you can kind of inspire people and motivate people with your story. What we don't want is people to end up in the situation that you were in, and in the most tragic cases they don't make it through, or they make it through but they're still not happy and things don't work. And I think the sooner that you can kind of get that addressed, the better. And if the owning a business is a part of what's affecting you, there are people out there that can help you. There are things that can be done to try to remedy that. But as you just said, it does start with you in terms of you need to make sure that you kind of you reach out for help, which I get isn't always an easy thing to do, but it can be liberating if you can.
The feeling I had that, where do I start? I didn't ask for help, because where do I start and what can they help me with? It's too much. It felt like it's my responsibility. I have to try to sort it out. So where can people find you? Where can the dentists find you?
So if you stick my name into Google and put the word dental after it, I would hope, if we've done our marketing right, I'd hope I'll pop up. But I tend to be on LinkedIn and Instagram. Those tend to be the two easiest and quickest ways to find me. And genuinely, I'm always available for a chat. And for my part, we're a very long tail business. We've been doing this, the business has been established for 37 years. So we feel embedded as part of the dental community. I talk to lots of people where there isn't something immediately that I can do for them, but I know that over the course of the years to come, we will be able to help them. And even if there isn't something where there's a commercial benefit immediately to me, I feel passionately about the importance of dentists, and particularly independently owned dental practices. So I'm always available to those people to have a conversation. But yeah, primarily LinkedIn and Instagram, those are probably the easiest and quickest ways to find me.
That's perfect. And you have a website as well?
Yes. It's ft-associates.com. So all of our services are on there. We run a series of webinars and seminars ongoing as well. So we do seminars for people either wanting to buy a practice or sell a practice. So if people want to come to those, that's quite an easy entry point. But I also appreciate that the questions get quite specific quickly. So if people want to have a private conversation, we can do that as well.
Wonderful. You're helping so many dentists out there. Thank you so much.
No, not at all. It's a great profession. It really is. It's a great profession that isn't always but it isn't always equipped with the tools needed. And it's not the dentist's fault. As we said right at the beginning, the training is very clinically focused. But if you don't have other things in your kit bag that support you on the business side of things, life can be quite hard. But it doesn't need to be.
Great. The podcast name is Going from Stress to Success.
Love that. That's great.
What is your best advice from going from stress to success in life?
I think it's identifying the things you enjoy and you're good at. I think it's having the awareness for the things that need to be done, but you're probably not particularly good at. And going back to what I was saying before, I genuinely think that stress and pressure comes from being asked to do things that we're not great at. And I think once you can identify those things that still need to be done, it's bringing in people around you, whether that's team members or outsourcing it, so that you focus on the things you're good at and you enjoy, but those other things get done by other people. And I think if you can go through that process and achieve that, I think that should de-stress you as an individual And in turn, I think that will bring greater success as well, because we tend to do better if we do the things we enjoy.
Amazing. I totally agree. Because success for me is having a life that is aligned with your values and purpose. And that's exactly what you said. Thank you so much, Andy.
You're welcome. You're welcome. It's been really enjoyable. It's been really enjoyable. It's been a great conversation.
Really. I really enjoyed it, just as every time I speak with you. Thank you so much.
No problem at all.
Have a lovely day. See you
You
soon.
too. Cheers, Christina. Keep well. Cheers.
Cheers.
Ta-ra. Bye.
You're so clever.
No. I've learned this from people that are way cleverer than me.
I wish I had a smiler when I had my dental practice. It removes so much stress from the dental team, handling online bookings, patient questions with a chatbot, pre- and post-treatment automations, and even offering a marketplace for dental treatments. Smiler isn't just a sponsor, it's a solution. That's why I love working with them, because they take dental teams from stress to success. If this episode helped you, don't keep it to yourself. Like, comment, and subscribe. Not for the algorithm, but to help more dental professionals go from stress to success. Your support means the world. See you next time.